In elementary school, many of us remember the science project of planting a bean seed and just watching it grow. We had our little cup of soil, maybe an egg carton, and eagerly awaited our little sprout to break through to the surface. Oh, the nostalgia. Well, SEO is kind of like this. Not to say that it's an experiment, but it takes time for the seed, in this case, the SEO, to grow and actually see the results, which are the leads. Sometimes we're patient, sometimes we're not so patient. So if you're going to do the work on SEO, you want to make sure that those efforts are going to pay off. And one thing I see a lot of law firms get hung up on is blogging. A lot of effort and a lot of time, but what's the reward? Guess what? I've got the receipts to show you that blogging actually works. And it's why all of my law firm clients have a blog. It's not a waste of time, though it takes patience to see the results through the fruition. But let me say one thing. Yes, blogging is worth it, and yes, it's important for every law firm, but there are a few must-haves to consider to ensure that your blog actually works. So let's get into it. So you've got your little bean sprout of a blog, or maybe it's still a seed, or a full-on Jack and the Beanstalk tower. In any case, the content that lives there needs to be effective. So why should a law firm have a blog? One, it adds fresh, relevant content to your website, which Google loves. It targets important keywords that your potential clients are searching for. It earns backlinks from other websites, which help to boost your website's authority. And it also keeps visitors engaged, signaling to Google that your site is valuable. What kind of blogs actually help with SEO? Answering common legal questions that your audience is searching for. Also being well structured with headlines, bullet points, and short paragraphs. Including internal links to other pages on your website, and being optimized with keywords naturally so that you're not keyword stuffing. You also want to make sure that you have clear call to actions, like scheduling a free consultation, and have a strategic content plan, not just random blog post. So what are the 3 most important factors to consider when keeping up with a blog? I'd say most importantly is having a strategy before you just write content. I think a lot of law firms and businesses in general just make that mistake where they go to a conference and somebody from stage says content is king, and you listen to that and then you go back and you just start writing content on your website what you think is important, right? So I think the first thing is kind of having a strategy. The second thing is knowing who's writing the content for you, making sure are they qualified to answer the questions that your users and your potential clients are searching for. And the third thing I would say, which a lot of people miss, is going back and reading the content on your blog and making sure that you, as a user reading your own content, will be comfortable in hiring your firm based on what you're reading, right? A lot of times people don't ever go back and read their own content because they hire other bloggers. And I think that's a mistake, right? So at some time, you want to kind of go back and start reading your own blog content to make sure that you would feel comfortable actually hiring yourself if you found this piece of content online when doing a search. So should law firms write their own content themselves, hire a writer, or is it okay to use AI? I think it's perfectly fine to hire other people to write your content, as long as they realize that they're writing to a user that probably has like an 8th grade reading level. So you don't want to hire like a lawyer to write your content, because you're not really writing to other lawyers. You're writing to users that are basically doing Google searches that might have seen maybe you on TV or on a billboard, right? Just make sure that you're actually reading it. Make sure that they're following all of the ethical guidelines for your state, that they're not saying anything that could potentially get you a bar grievance. And in terms of using AI, I think in this day and age, I think you are at a disadvantage if you are not leveraging AI. Now, I say that with a caveat. I say that meaning I don't expect you to just basically go to ChatGPT and say, write me an article about this, and then take that content and then put it on your website. However, and I even do this myself, is I will write an article and then I'll put it into ChatGPT and I'll say, grammar check this article or rewrite this a little differently, right? So that this way you can get different inspiration on how to maybe say something differently. And so, again, I think that you're at a disadvantage if you're not using AI in this day and age. So how long does it take for a blog to generate results? I think that depends. If you're a brand new website that doesn't have any authority, it doesn't really have any links coming into it, that blog result might not rank for months, right? And that's just because you need to boost the authority of the domain by getting other people to link back to it, right? But in other times, right, if you have a website that's been around for 10 years and somebody's doing SEO on a regular basis, oftentimes I've seen somebody take a piece of content, like publish it on their blog, and then boom, it's like ranking within hours, right? Shortly after you publish it, right? So I think that's a question that really depends on the authority of the actual domain itself. How often should law firms post content on their blog? I think at a minimum, you should be posting content at least, maybe once a week, posting a new piece of content on it doesn't have to be your blog, right? But on your website, right? When Google crawls the website, they want to see that there's more pages that are there today than there was yesterday, right? You could never have enough content on your website, right? So based on your budget, based on your resources, I would try to publish as much content as possible, but make sure that you are consistent with it, right? You don't want to just publish 50 pages this month and then not do anything until, 4 months later, right? So be consistent. If you're publishing 10 pages or 10 articles per month, do that every month. As you're starting to generate leads and traffic, maybe you go to 15 pages, maybe you go to 20 pages. We have some clients where we're publishing like 400 pages of content every single month. So let's just say you're a marketing director and you work at a law firm and your firm doesn't have a blog. How do you convince them to start one? I would probably teach yourself, and then hopefully you can educate your owner of your firm on why it's important to have a blog. Maybe look at some of their competitors and look at where they're getting traffic. You can use tools like Ahrefs or SEMrush to look at that analysis. And then you start to put together gaps, right? You can see that, these 3 competitors are taking all this market share away from us just because they took the time to actually create content and publish it on their blog or on their website, whereas we don't have a page that satisfies the intent of this particular search. So how should law firms come up with blog topics? I think there's a couple things that you can do here. For one, just start putting questions into Google, right? So whatever you think that your ideal target audience is looking for related to your niche, just put those questions into Google, and then what you'll probably see is that Google has this thing called People Also Ask, where they'll basically feed you with like 3 or 4 questions that are kind of related to the question that you put into Google. And then if you click on the bottom question, it'll give you another 3 questions. And you click on the bottom question again, it gives you another 3 questions, right? That's a great way to kind of understand like what Google sees in terms of people searching questions about that particular topic, right? So that's the first thing that you can do. Second thing that you can do is you can use tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush to maybe do keyword research. There's another tool called Answer the Public where you can actually put questions in, and that will give you a laundry list of topics as well. And then the last thing, which I think a lot of law firms miss, is listening to your clients, right? You can use AI to listen to phone calls. You can transcribe the actual the recordings of the calls, and then maybe it extracts all of the questions that people are asking. So if you get 100 calls every single day, maybe there's 50 questions that came up, right? And out of those 50 questions, that would be probably good blog topics that you can add to your website, and then maybe even create videos like this where you address the question in a video format. So the question is, what parts of the blog needs to be optimized to best drive SEO results? I would be lying if I just told you that it doesn't matter, just write content, publish it on your website, and you're gonna get all the results in the world. That's not always the case. Like, there are definitely more advanced things that you can do from a technical perspective in terms of the way in which you structure the blog content, the way in which you use something called schema markup, the way in which you internally link back to the blog post. There's also things called pagination and breadcrumbs, and so there's all these different technical terms, but hopefully you have a good agency like maybe Hennessey Digital that's advising you on this stuff. And if you don't, you might want to find somebody to maybe help out with the technical part of the strategy. Blogging definitely helps with law firms' SEO if done strategically, but it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution. Random low-quality blog post won't cut it, but well-researched, keyword-optimized, and valuable content will. That's the stuff that will boost your rankings, drive more traffic to your website, and ideally attract new clients. So be sure to keep up with your blog if you want to show up as a thought leader in your space, which will build trust with potential clients, drive traffic through relevant and high-value keywords, and direct passive readers to other important pages on your website while giving your law firm an edge over your competitors. And then lastly, the one other benefit that comes by having a blog is that you will attract natural backlinks to your website, which can improve the authority and the rankings. The key to an effective blog is writing on relevant, thought-provoking topics. So get creative with it, ask your audience what they're most interested in, and weave in the SEO best practices to ensure that it ranks. If you've got questions about this particular topic, be sure to drop some questions in the comments below, and then I will include them in my next video. As always, I'm Jason Hennessey. This is Honest SEO. Like and subscribe for more SEO tips, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.